Everyone thinks AI lies when it breaks, but engineers who built these models prove it hallucinates by design, and 5 prompt habits cut those made-up answers down. Habit 1 takes 1 sentence. This isn't harmless. People have filed fake legal cases and AI invented, shipped wrong numbers into reports, and quoted studies that don't exist. Here's the uncomfortable part. You can't switch hallucination off, but you can steer it. Those 5 habits are the steering wheel. So what is a hallucination really? It's fluent, confident output that isn't grounded in any real source. Not a bug's a byproduct. Here's the mechanism. A model like this doesn't look anything up. It predicts the next likely word, then the next, guessing what plausible text usually follows. Ask it about a river, and it produces words that sound like a correct answer about that river, whether or not they're true. It's optimizing for plausible sounding, not for accurate. That's the whole trick. Now the part people miss. There's no built-in fact-checker inside. Nothing pauses to verify a claim against reality. And it has no awareness of when it's guessing versus when it knows. A wild fabrication and a rock-solid fact come out in the exact same confident tone. Let that land, break time equals 0. 6 is / confidence and correctness are completely unrelated here. The model sounds equally sure when it's right and when it's inventing. So a smooth, authoritative answer tells you nothing about whether it's true. But why is this baked in by design? Because of how it learned. During training, the model was rewarded for producing completions that look right. Fill the blank with the plausible word, score higher. Nothing in that process rewards saying I don't know. So when the model hits a gap, something thin or missing in its training data, it doesn't stop. It fills the hole with a confident guess, because a confident guess is what scored well. That's the design. Here's where the danger clusters. Certain zones are hallucination minefields. Obscure facts almost nobody wrote about. Exact quotes and citations where one wrong digit breaks everything. Math where it pattern matches instead of calculating. And very recent events past its training cutoff. It simply wasn't there for those. In those zones, the gaps are widest, so the confident guessing runs hottest. Since the cause lives in the training itself, you can't patch it from outside. So the fix moves to the one thing you control. How you prompt it. Here come the 5 habits. Habit 1. Give it an out. Left alone, a model treats silence as failure and fills it with a guess. So tell it plainly that not knowing is an acceptable answer. Watch the contrast. Ask a bare question who wrote this obscure paper, and it may hand you a confident, invented author. Now add 1 line of permission to abstain. The uncertainty surfaces instead of getting papered over. It's allowed to say the honest thing, so it does. Here's a prompt you can copy. If you're not certain, say I don't know. Do not guess. That single sentence changes the incentive. You've told it that admitting a gap beats inventing a filler. And because you removed the pressure to always produce an answer, the fabrications that used to fill silence stop appearing. 1 lines. Real drop in made-up facts. Habit 2. Ground it in the source. By default, the model answers from a fuzzy blend of everything it absorbed in training. Memory that's easy to misremember. So don't make it rely on memory. Hand it the actual text. Paste the document, the data, the email thread, then tell it to answer only from what you pasted. Why does this work so well? You've fenced it in. When the answer must come from the text in front of it, there's no empty gap to fill with an invention from training. It either finds the answer on the page or it can't, and now it'll tell you it can't. Here's a copyable prompt. Using only the text below, answer the question. If the answer isn't in the text, say so. That last clause matters. You've closed the escape hatch where it wanders back to memory and starts guessing again. Habit 3. Make it cite and quote. This one is a lie detector. Require the model to point at the exact line or source behind every claim, and pull the words as a direct quote. Why does this expose fabrications? Because an invented claim has nothing real to quote. When the model has to attach a verifiable reference, the made-up ones collapse. There's no line to point at, so the bluff shows. A true claim quotes cleanly. A fake one either stalls or quotes something that doesn't actually say what it claimed. Here's a copyable prompt. For each claim, quote the exact sentence from the source that supports it. Then you do the quick check. Does the quote really back the claim? Fabrications don't survive that step because you're no longer trusting the answer. You're trusting the evidence it's forced to show. Habit 4. Make it show its steps. This one is for math and logic, where a single confident answer hides where things went wrong. Instead of accepting one number, ask it to reason step by step and lay out the work. Why does that help? Because it separates the reasoning from the final answer. When the steps are visible, a slip becomes something you can actually see and point to. A dropped decimal, a flipped sign, a wrong assumption in line 2. A bare answer hides the mistake inside confidence. The steps drag it into the open. Here's a copyable prompt. Solve this step by step, showing each calculation before giving the final answer. Now you can scan the chain and catch the exact spot it went sideways. You're not asking it to be perfect. You're making its errors inspectable, so the ones you can spot you can fix. Habit 5. Lower the stakes of the guess. The wider and vaguer your question, the more empty space there is to fill with confident fiction. So shrink the space. Narrow the scope and add constraints. A specific time range, a single domain, a rule like only include widely documented facts. Why does tightening work? Because a well-scoped ask has fewer gaps to invent inside. You're pointing the model at ground it actually covered well, instead of the thin edges where it starts making things up. A tight question is a small target. There's simply less room to miss. Here's a copyable prompt. List only widely documented facts about this topic from 2010 to 2020. Skip anything uncertain. That skip anything uncertain clause pairs right back with habit 1. You've handed it a narrow lane and permission to stay honest inside it. Now the whole picture clicks. Hallucination isn't a glitch you wait to be fixed. It's woven into how the model works. It predicts plausible words, has no fact checker, and fills every gap with confidence. So the win was never switching it off. The win is steering. Run the checklist. 1. Give it an out. 2. Ground it in the source. 3. Demand citations. 4. Make it show its steps. 5. Tighten the scope. Each one closes a different door the fabrications use to slip through. And here's the mindset that ties them together. Stop treating AI output as a finished fact. Treat it as a confident first draft. Fluent, useful, and unverified until you check it. The habits don't make it truthful. They make its guessing visible, so the false parts have nowhere left to hide. AI hallucinates by design, but now you know the 5 habits that cut those made-up answers down. Pick one and try it on your very next prompt. Curious what's actually happening inside the model when it predicts each word? That mechanism is next.